All right then. Well, welcome to the podcast, everyone. We might as well just get going, chatting away. My name's Nick from Conservation Careers. Joining me on this kind of happy hour format, and the first one we've done since March, and it's June, so it's been sort of 2 or 3 months. Our sort of regular co-host, friends of the show, part of Conservation Careers too. We've got Nando, Fernando Mateos-González. Hey, Nando, how you doing?
Hi there. Long time no see.
It's been a while. You've been busy. We're going to talk about what's been going on in a minute too.
Spring is busy for conservationists.
It seems that way. Yeah. So we'll have a bit of a catch up, but good to see you. And also over there in Vancouver City, not the island at the moment, is Kristi. Hey, Kristi.
Hey, guys.
Hi,
nice
Kristi.
to see you. Yeah, it feels like it's long overdue that we've had one of these calls and catch-ups.
Yeah,
happy hour.
This is the format we have just for having a catch up, really, isn't it? We sort of re-record it, but it's actually a bit of a catch up anyway, like a non kind of worky planning kind of chat, which is quite nice, just to kind of have these kind of more informal discussions. Yeah. Well, before we get into the kind of topic of today, which is all about kind of the best bits of working in conservation, like happy memories and the kind of the lighter side, the fun side of the movement. It is long overdue actually having a bit of a catch up, really, and just seeing what's been going on and just sort of sharing, everything that's been going on the last 2-3 months. Who wants to start? I'm going to point at you, Nando. You're on my screen. I think I'd love to hear what's going on. You've been a particularly busy boy. So kind of fill us in. What's been going on since March? What have you been up to?
Oh, yeah. It's been a busy but fun time. Mostly now, in the Northern Hemisphere, it's spring. So it's busy with the reproduction of many animals. So it's also our...
That's really where you're going, though. Go on.
Yeah, it's getting... Yeah, it's mostly for us. It's been very busy on the ground squirrel side. Mm-hmm. So they are out and about only for a few months. So we have to put all in now and study them and do lots of experiments and monitoring and all of this. Because then in September, they are all underground until next spring. So now is when we have to do all the work. And at the same time, our project is finishing. We had a 3-year project on this. And until we have a few smaller projects, but now is the time to write all the reports, to publish all the papers that we should have been publishing all along, but you need the data. Mm-hmm. So it's hyper busy. It's you do the field work and the lab work and the desk work all at the same time. And it's pretty hectic. But apart from that species, we work with many other species. So it's everything at the same time. And one of my highlights this last few months was briefly go to the north of the Czech Republic to work with a colleague and friend of mine on the flycatchers, which are some small passerines, small birds. And we go and monitor the nest boxes where they breed. And I love that work that I used to do since I started university. And it's my favorite. I have lots of fun with that. And apart from that, some bits of traveling here and there, doing things in other countries. So that's been fun. And in the last, now just to tell you, I didn't tell you before when we were chatting, just before the podcast started recording, in the last bit of the last trip, when I was coming back, I think I got COVID from someone. And this weekend I've been suffering. Finally, after 2 years, it caught up with me. So I think I'm not 100% sure, because now you don't get it in the, I don't know, I cannot get it in the test. But I have all the symptoms. So if you see my brain getting scattered, it's not the usual scattered brain of Nando. It's like the enhanced version of COVID.
Oh, no. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, thanks for joining. I hope you're sort of feeling up for a chat today.
Getting better. Yeah. The worst is over, fortunately.
Good. I've got a few friends and family that currently have it right now too. It feels like there is a bit of a wave going on of maybe a new variant or something like that. Yeah. But going back to the ground squirrels then. So these are sussex, these like little endangered mammals that live underground. They pop up in the spring and you study them, trying to understand them. Can you share, like, have you found anything particularly out that you're writing up in terms of the results? Is there anything that would be of interest to share more widely?
Oh, well, there are many things I'm trying to write up at the same time, which is getting confusing. But some interesting things. One is that they are critically endangered in the Czech Republic, but recovering in certain locations, and some other locations have crashed completely. So it's very tricky to analyze what's going on and what can be the cause of success and the cause for crashing those populations. And also at the same time, we are trying to guess that and to analyze that. And there might be heavy rains involved in some cases of like sassliks that don't get back up in spring after hibernation. They might get drowned directly from heavy rains. But also in the places where the populations are thriving a bit better, we have to start thinking about sustainable conservation, because in the past this species was considered a pest because they were able to destroy fields and crops when there were many individuals. So we have been testing some fun experiments. For example, trying to test the effectiveness of all these traditional methods that people put in the fields to protect against birds, for example, like these plastic bottles that go around and make noises, or kites, or maybe fancier methods like ultrasound or things like that. And we have been testing all of those and nothing works. Basically beyond, sort of, the only thing that seems to work is to actually block the fields, to make a little fence. No, you don't need a very high one, but just to block even the view of the tomatoes, for example, will help. So we have been setting lots of camera traps, setting lots of experiments, and it's so much fun just to see those images and those videos of the sassliks looking suspicious for a few minutes and then just going all in and eating all the, cucumber.
Makes no difference. My kids watch a thing called Grizzly and the Lemmings on Netflix, and it's like a big grizzly bear based in Canada and these little lemmings, and the little lemmings are just so comical, and they work together as a team, and we're sort of imagining sassliks are like
it's the same, yes.
These lemmings, little cute things. Yeah, sounds good, but sounds busy. So it's in the write-up phase. Yeah. Well, I hope you feel better soon. Thanks for joining, as always. Yeah.
Getting better.
Yeah. And Kristi, what's been going on with you for the last 2-3 months?
Well, actually, I saw my first ground squirrels in Canada a couple of weeks ago. I was really excited because we don't have them everywhere in Canada. So I was in a different city and I was just amazed. Yeah. But, and I think, Nando, what you just described, a lot of people who have gardens can probably relate to the pain of keeping squirrels out of their gardens. I know in my family, there's a few people who garden and they just go to great lengths, and the squirrels get through everything. But anyway, update wise, I came back from Brazil recently. So I've been in Brazil I was in Brazil the last time we had our Happy Hour podcast. And then on the way back from Brazil to Canada, stopped in the UK for about a week, whirlwind week. Yeah. Nick and I met for the first time in the same country and place, which was
in person.
In person.
I was so envious.
Yeah. So that was really nice. Had a great planning session for CC over the course of the week. Yeah. Did some good hiking too.
We did a lot, didn't we? We did a lot. Yeah, we had some lovely walks, did a lot of thinking, planning. There was a lot of post-it notes involved and reorganizing of post-it notes and clarifying thoughts. And the trip to Wales, we went to Snowdonia as well. We went sort of hiking up the mountains in beautiful weather. It's not always beautiful Wales, but boy, it was sunny and hot and lovely. Yeah, we had good fun. And actually we saw, looping back to your bird nesting, Nando, we saw a We call it a pied flycatcher. Yeah, which is a bit like it's a black and white one. And there was a male singing up in a really tall oak tree by the river one day. So, and to me, I've only seen like one or two ever. So it's lovely to see that. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. I was following your adventure closely and then thinking, if you think about it, we have, the three of us have met with each other in person already, but never the three of us together.
Yeah.
That would be lovely, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Isn't it?
It's coming.
Yeah. But so that was really nice. And now back in Canada, and I guess the highlight here was like going on a bit of a, I'd probably call it an ecotourism adventure on the northern part of Vancouver Island. So far west of Canada, there's a quite big island called Vancouver Island. And on the north end of this island, there's hardly any people really. It's quite wild still. So we went on a boat trip to see marine wildlife. And it was like going on a safari on the water. It was wild. We saw so much, we saw humpback whales and dolphins and porpoises and sea otters and seals and sea lions, and the list goes on. Yeah, it was phenomenal, like just.
Do you have a favorite? Your best observation?
I'd say in general, it's fun to be surprised. So I've always enjoyed when it's just been me out, say in the forest, not expecting something, as opposed to sort of going out looking for it and knowing that I'll probably see it. But I think from that experience, it would be the dolphins, because they came, we just sort of sat still and they came to the boat and we're just playing with the boat, essentially. Obviously unplanned. But yeah, that was incredible. Yeah.
Nice.
So
looks fantastic. Yeah, you shared some pictures too. It's like, wow, okay, that's proper Canada. I've still never seen a whale. It's on my to-do list. I think most people probably have, but I'm still struggling to have seen one. Yeah, I live in the wrong place probably. Cool. Well, I think probably the highlight for me the last couple of months was probably your trip too, actually. Yeah, to the UK. That was great. That week we spent together and thinking and planning. And actually what's resulted of that is a much, I think, greater clarity for us as to what CC might look like over the next sort of 2, 3, 5 years even. And we've got a much clearer, for want of a better word, like vision, I guess, as to what we're trying to achieve and how we're trying to help people like into conservation, provide like clear, what we might call like pathways, into different roles, help people navigate their options, to provide them the training they need to be as good as they can be in those roles. And also help professional conservationists to be as good as they can be and have the great impact and be employable. We played with all those ideas and actually walked away with actually a pretty well-refined, strategy, I guess. Really, I think we know what it is we want to do now, and I'm really excited by sort of opportunities to make it happen as well. Yeah, which is all good stuff. Yeah, other stuff, I guess, from my side. It's all quite worky, I'm afraid. We're working on a website right now, I think about version 4 of the website. We're sort of 8 years old, and that's coming along really nice. We've had designs done for a while, but now the developers are working at pace and it's looking really good. So I'm quite excited by sort of where that might go. And certainly by the end of the year, if not sooner, that will be live. We've launched a course as well that's been really fun. Public speaking for conservationists with Tara Phillips, who did a webinar for us. And she's like a TEDx coach and public speaking coach. And we're now halfway through the course. Actually, we're doing them as live events, 6 live events. The 3rd live event was last night. We've got 3 more to go. We've got a great kind of cohort going through that, and Tara's kind of showing us and teaching us how to improve our presentations. So I'm learning. I hope our webinars will be even better as a result. And that's been fun. And and wildlife. I've been torturing fish in the River Wye as well. So I went fishing at the weekend with a couple of friends, and it always kind of tugs on me slightly that yes, it's the ethics of fishing doesn't seem quite right in terms of putting hooks in fish and yanking them in. But that aside, I did have a lovely time, and me and a couple of friends, and we caught a lot of fish, and I caught some really nice fish, and had a barbecue and did all sorts of stuff that was nice. And I didn't even think about work for about 3 days, Or don't tell them I didn't think about my family either for a couple of days, which was lovely. Just switched off. It was great. Yeah. So we've all been busy. We've all been doing stuff. Yeah. Right. Okay. So let's get on to the topic of today then, which kind of like links to a lot of what we've just been talking about, really sort of nice memories, I guess, from the last few months. I'd like us to kind of talk around our kind of happiest times, within our careers as sort of conservationists, really, for people who are listening who maybe want to be conservationists and, are aspiring and working towards that. And perhaps we're trying to help you as well, maybe on one of our programs, something like that. We don't often talk about that kind of the really fun, good bits and all the happy memories and, the nice things about the movement, the reasons people want to work in conservation, really. So, we did have an episode a few episodes back about the good, the bad, and the ugly, which kind of shows the breadth. And that's what we're all about, transparency. But I thought today, let's just kind of sell the dream a little bit and let's talk about the good stuff and the fun stuff and the kind of happy memories that kind of jump out when we think back at our careers. Yeah. So who wants to start? I'm not going to point at anyone this time. And I feel like, maybe I've done enough talking to like, when you think back
just to hear both of your stories, it's quite hard to pick the highlights.
It is tough, isn't it? Yeah. Kristi, you were saying before that you sort of see highlights and happiness as two interrelated things. Is that right?
Yeah, I found if I try and pick out moments, it's the things that come to mind as highlights or sort of peak memories or peak experiences, I think are often quite sort of personal experiences, tend to be in nature. It was, in a jungle, or it was an adventure or something like that, where I was just having a great time personally. Sometimes with a small group of, colleagues or whoever I was with at the time. Whereas, maybe I can come to this in a minute, some of the most fulfilling things were actually quite different experiences, where I was working, say, remotely or from home, but there was a very tangible impact on someone else or on several other people. And that for me was actually much more fulfilling ultimately. So they're almost quite different experiences. Yeah.
Do you want to give examples of each one?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I guess of the first, like the kind of peak experiences in nature. So I came from a background, I studied geology. And in the midst of studying geology, realized that I was way more interested in wildlife. So figured I should probably pursue that. And so I went and I did kind of like an internship in Mexico, in southern Mexico, in a place called Chiapas. So they have rainforest. It's kind of like an extension of more tropical rainforest further south. It's a really beautiful area. Rainforest and a lot of agriculture. And so I was helping a master's student do a study looking at sort of what helped biodiversity persist in forest fragments. So we would just go around to all these different forest fragments in Mexico. And we would go quite early in the morning and do surveys. We're looking specifically at mammals, like medium to large mammals. And we go out early mornings and we go out in the nights also. And just being in the forest, quiet, especially actually at night, listening to the forest, smelling the forest, hearing the forest, like that experience was so meditative. Mm-hmm. And just so special. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. So there wasn't, well, I guess there were moments, like there were neat moments. I think we saw like pit viper in the night and a boa up in the trees above us. And we saw cool things for sure. But even just the experience of being in the forest and that connected to the forest and the life in the forest was so nice.
You see, that's exactly what I get from fishing. It's exactly that. It's just being totally immersed within nature and quite sedentary as well, like just sitting in one spot. I mean, I'll sit in one spot for like 10 hours, and be on my own for 10 hours and just be sort of relaxed and immersed and sort of almost, I guess, what you might call mindful and just enjoying that connection. And also the excitement of what might happen to, like for you, it might be a pit viper or something. For me, it might be my rod going over and catching a fish, but it's very much the same feeling and why I enjoy that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's very, very present, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. There was actually a funny moment when we did that where we we had to like cross through this. They called it an eco park. It was kind of like a zoo, but quite nicely set up with a bit more space. And we had to cross over these crocodiles in order to get to where we were going to run the survey. So we had to like climb over this really rickety bridge over these crocodiles. And I just remember being the other people who I was with thinking, like, I'm not having any of this. You're not making me cross through these crocodiles.
Not mindfulness.
I thought it was great.
Oh gosh. It reminds me of the scene in James Bond where he runs across the back of like 10 crocodiles to escape from.
We didn't quite do that. No. Yeah.
So that's one type. You mentioned the other type too, then, about, I don't know, having more impact or more connection with others. Have you got?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think there's been many, but maybe one of the first was working in Peru. And so I worked for an organization where we had quite a number of tourists, but also volunteers and interns come in. So the same part of the world where Nando and I met, deep in the Peruvian Amazon.
That beautiful corner.
Yeah. And there, I think what was special was seeing people who hadn't actually really experienced nature or rainforest, tropical rainforest before, come in and just be amazed, and then leave that experience. Many of them like much more interested in conservation, and some of them even wanting to work in conservation. So that was quite neat. But I think ultimately what I do now at Conservation Careers is probably the most fulfilling by far. And so even though, you know, in our day-to-day work, I'm not off running around in the rainforest, which I love doing, or having adventures or getting lost or any of those fun things, but it's really easy to see the impact of what we do. You know, I think there's a lot of control over the direction we take and how we help people. And we get a lot of feedback and know that the stuff we do, the resources we produce, they're actually helping people. You know, they're helping people get employed, they're helping people be happy in their careers. And to me, that's a lot more fulfilling than a lot of the work that I did before, where that impact wasn't quite so tangible. You know, you're kind of working towards something, but not seeing the result of it. So, yeah.
I hadn't really thought about it in that way before, about like fun versus impact, and they can be quite sort of separate things. Yeah. And I've felt the same in terms of some things I've done in the past where I've enjoyed it. A good example would be like when I was doing press and media work at BirdLife, and I was writing news stories and press releases and managing the website and starting social media accounts and all that sort of stuff. And I sort of knew it was having an impact, but I didn't really know what it was. You know, a sort of, you know, a press release would do well. It would be in, I don't know, a dozen papers or whatever, something like that. And that's always exciting to see it, you know, in these various newspapers, and it got out there. But you think, well, what, you know, so what? You know, what actually happened as a result of that? And I think when you often sort of, particularly when you, I think, sit behind a desk and you're involved in the sort, I mean, most of my work is desk-based, you know, it's hard to really connect to that impact and stay motivated as a result. And the reason the reason I work in conservation is I want to try and make a bit of a difference out there and help wildlife and help people a little bit. And so finding the bits where we do that most, and I feel the same, like Conservation Careers does that for me. Is a real kind of rewarding moment. Yeah.
It feels that most of us starting conservation or biology or zoology, we start following those moments that you described so well, Kristi, the personal moments in nature, or the actual, I'm helping one animal rescue in a rescue center, for example, or I'm feeding a koala. We get that call, no? And once we get there and get to live that, we enjoy it massively. But then we realize we can do much more or get much more leverage if we perhaps add more desk work or try to work on the perhaps what was wrong with that koala, for example. No, how can we prevent the koala reaching the rescue center? Or, for example, now in conservation careers, how we can put out there many more conservationists so that it creates a much bigger impact. And then it's what you say. One is a very direct personal pleasure that we get from the activity, and it perhaps is a bit more egoistic. No, like I enjoy very much being in the field or in the jungle like you, or just with a bird in my hands and I learning about this species. And then at the same time, where you get all the focus and the strength, the desire, the enthusiasm is when you are working to improve something, and then you get also very tangible results later. No, you see that an area is protected after your work, or the status of an animal. All of a sudden, you have a population that is thriving thanks to your work and some measures that you have put in place. Well, that of course is much more fulfilling, but you are a bit more detached from the actual individual animal. So I think we have it the best, this combination of fulfilling power leverage of doing something good for the world, and at the same time be doing the same thing we wanted to do since we were children, like playing with animals. I'm still playing with animals. So it's a good combination.
It's like at some level, like the joy of experiencing nature and immersing yourself in it. It's like almost like the catalyst as well, isn't it? It's like the thing that starts,
exactly, yes,
and then later becomes the impact of, well, how are you gonna connect to that moment again, and how you're gonna help there to be more of the things you love in the world. And that often becomes about the work you do, and it's more functional, but still trying to connect to that deeper thing, the passion that started off at the very beginning. Yeah.
I always used to think that transition happened, because you see that with a lot of people, certainly not everyone, a lot of people starting with field work, being actually in nature, quite hands-on, and then shifting back to sort of more desk-based work. But I used to think that happened, because of things like pay or having families, or sort of trying to, you're settling in life. But I think as much as that, it does come from what you guys have described, like just realizing that you can have a bigger impact and you can do more. And as you kind of go through your career, the desire to be able to do more and have a more lasting impact on the sector and on other people working in the sector, that grows. And I don't think I realized that at the beginning.
Yeah. And I think it's very easy for that to get out of balance as well, like in terms of a lot of people get into conservation because of animals, and then it becomes all about people. And I think that's like another transition people go through, to realize, actually, if I want to conserve for me more barn owls, I need to be working with many more farmers, and that's the key relationship there, is the landowners, the managers on site. And it's all about that, really, how we work, inspire, motivate, and all that sort of stuff, the land managers to create more habitat, put up more nest boxes and all that sort of stuff, which I did at the beginning of my career and absolutely loved. But if I sort of think about a lot of people as they sort of progress and are promoted through their career, if they sort of rise through the ranks, you have to get quite detached from the thing that they first started out, at the beginning of their career, and why they even got in there. And after a while, you can sort of feel a bit out of kilter. I think that's classic for academics. You study something, you do your master's and your PhD or whatever, you become this expert at this thing. If you stay in it, you might become a lecturer or a researcher, and maybe you start like a lab group. You might become like a professor. You're managing people now, doing these projects. That's your particular area of specialism, and you're not really doing it yourself. Other people are doing it on your behalf, and you're sort of slowly but surely moving away from that thing. And I think that you see that throughout lots of different careers and lots of different jobs, but it's particularly prevalent, I think, within this. And something I think, Nando, you've really managed to keep hold of, which is really important, is that connection to the field. You could probably be working for an NGO right now and be a program manager and doing very well, I'm sure, but you wouldn't have that connection that's clearly so important to you, and baking that travel and the survey and the field work into what you do
in the field. I made that transition out of academia, or the classic path of within academia, because of exactly that reason you described. Because I was feeling farther and farther from the beginning, and I had the path was leading me to direct a group of students and just write grants for them, and then from there build a lab, and the students will do the actual field work for the whole lab. So then at some point I had to switch gears and then try to find a way to keep on doing at least a bit of the fieldwork part, at least to get close to the animals and get more hands-on daily experience.
And that was now, a conscious thing, was it? You decided, you realized.
Yeah. I was getting funneled into that position. I mean, I don't know if I will have gotten to be a PI in my own lab, because that's extremely difficult, especially right now. But certainly, if I was staying there, that was the natural progression, or at least what everybody is aiming for if staying. And there are some options, but it's much more difficult staying in academia. So I had to find a way to keep on doing what I like being also in the field. I like all the other parts too, and that's a blessing and a problem because then you can never specialize or find the time for everything. But I mean, right now, I think I'm in a very nice equilibrium. Perhaps a bit too much work, but it's nice. I get to spend 2 days at home, 3 days in the field, and switch a bit and try different projects. So that's really nice. But I really need this being close to nature and also do things that have an impact. So it's a sweet spot.
Yeah. Somehow you manage to balance that just so brilliantly, having both of those things together in your career. I think that's quite neat and quite unique.
It's very special. I think it's a nice moment in my life, but it's a bit too much.
I'm remembering the moment we had a call. Was it last week? I can't remember when it was, a couple of weeks ago maybe, and Nando giving Nick and I a date, by this date, everything's going to calm down. And both of us are just looking at you. No way, we know you too well.
Record that and play it back in September. Exactly.
Oh yes, please do it. Yeah. Send it to me from time to time.
I guess that's also the tricky thing with your life, is like one way to resolve this issue of overwork is to say no to more things.
Yes.
But actually, in the work that you're in, which is quite sort of grant and funding based, is you have to keep pushing out ideas and projects, and you never know which one's going to be successful. In a great world, you've got too much work to do, so you were quite successful. And if you didn't put enough out and they weren't successful, you wouldn't have the work. So it's constantly striking that balance, isn't it? It's the same in consultancy as well in business. You're constantly putting out proposals, trying to secure work, and trying to be competitive too. I find a real tension in that trying to keep my bids fairly low, reasonable. So I'm competitive. I'll get the work. That's great for me. And it's good for, it looks good against my, what they call like a utilization rate and all that sort of stuff. But then you get the work. It's like, oh gosh, I'm now going to do this really quick and quite a tight time scale and budget, because that's how I secured the work. And it's just like it's a treadmill and a really difficult balance to strike. Which I guess in other areas of conservation, you don't really get that. I guess if you're working on more longer term projects like your Sussex, 3-5 years, something like that, actually you can sort of settle into it a little bit and get into that pattern, and rather than sort of continuously chasing your tail. So like, fewer bigger things are more stable, and you've got lots of small things, you've got the variety, but it's running to kind of stay on top of it all the time, which I think is probably where you are a little bit.
Yeah, it goes in waves, and it's great when you hit one of those long-term waves and then you can plan. But then, I mean, you are the same. You guys, when you have a bit of time, then you say, I could do this new thing, this new shiny project.
Yeah.
And then
we've talked about it before, actually, a little bit. Yeah, sorry, Kristi.
No, I was just agreeing. That's all. The moment there's a little bit of space that you've been waiting for to open up, and it's like, oh yeah, what other thing can I add in?
We'll fill that space, don't worry.
let me fill it now.
Yeah. I've found, like, looking back, and we talked about this before probably, so I'll keep it brief, but I definitely see this kind of cycle of 2, 3, 4 years, and particularly 3 years seems to be the sweet spot, where year one's a new thing. It might be a new job. I'm learning, I'm enjoying it, stretching me. And it's not stressful, but it's kind of exciting. It's on that nice balance. Year two, I'm kind of good at it. I'm enjoying it. I'm sort of thriving. I'm feeling not an expert, but I'm feeling comfortable, in the role I'm doing, whatever that is. And then year 3 is often like, oh, I'm still doing it now. I'm a bit bored. I'm just doing the same thing I've been doing for 2 years, and that challenge is gone. That challenge is, I think, really important. If you lose it, that's where boredom kicks in. And so for me, the career challenge, and within conservation, the challenge for me, and it's 8 years old now, is to keep that challenge and keep that stretch and keep evolving and keep doing new things. So I think if we just stopped and said, right, we're going to pause, we are where we are, we're happy, we're having an impact, no more, we're just going to do what we're doing, I think rapidly that would get sort of boring for us internally, for me anyway. So for me, it's like create something new, make it as good as we can be, learn from that process, stretch ourselves, ensure it's working as best as we can make it work. And then it's about almost automating or stepping back and hoping that that plate is now spinning quite well, moving on to the next thing, and sort of growing it that way. And it's as with everything, it's a tricky balance, but that's what I think particularly Kristi and I are trying to wrestle with all the time. It's like the stuff we need to do because it needs to be done, and that's really important. And then the new stuff we really want to do, and creating enough time for us to be really doing a good job on that thing as well. Yeah.
Explore, reach out, and consolidate. And then it's another stage of exploring the new thing and then getting the best bit of it and consolidate the whole thing.
Yeah, it's a bit like that. I sort of see it like a spiral going round and never coming back on itself, like like a spring kind of going along and up. Yeah, and just trying to leave a fairly solid path behind you.
Another way I like to see it is like a video game. No, you start playing a video game and then you are like a small, I don't know, magician, no, or mage or a warrior. And then you have little skills, and then you fight with the goblins, and then you try to kill them, and then you get treasures and you get a bit better. And then the monsters you fight, they get also a bit better. And then after a while, you reach higher levels, you get better skills. And then fighting those goblins from the beginning, that gets very boring. You really want bigger bosses. You want bigger problems, different challenge, more challenges. So I think we go through life like this. It cannot get too easy because we get bored, and then we want to play another video game. Yeah. But if it gets too hard, also too many monsters at the same time, then you cannot get a higher level. you get kill and kill and kill. So it has to be this balance of getting exciting and progressing through the game. So I think life is a bit the same, especially the professional career.
That's a really good analogy. It definitely feels like that. So I was trying to unlock level 4. Yeah. Yeah. Well, swinging back slightly then to the theme of, I guess, sort of happiest times and impact and everything we've been talking about. Like I was sort of thinking through before the podcast about a few moments as well that kind of connect to me, and it definitely links to a lot of what we talked about. So one for me is, and we talked about this idea of like trying to have impact from behind a desk and understand what that might be. So when I worked as a fundraiser in the Pacific, one of the projects that was being run out of the office by a wonderful guy, kind of Steve, he ran what we call like the Invasive Species program within the Pacific. So he worked with our partners across 8 or 9 different countries and identify across all these islands across the Pacific region, which is just water with a few little specks of islands of kind of solid ground across them. On those are lots of kind of seabird breeding colonies. So obviously there's so much fish there, there's not many places to breed. They all can congregate on these kind of small islands in really high densities. And as people have moved around the region over millennia, they've been moving species around that shouldn't be there. Good examples would be like rats and cats and goats and pigs and mongoose and all that sort of stuff. They're all there in different proportions in different places, and they all cause major problems for the wildlife, and particularly the seabirds, ground nesting seabirds, where they've got nowhere else to go. Eggs and chicks are super vulnerable to things like rats who just turn up and eat them. So what Steve was doing was a program of identifying like the high priority seabird colonies that were being impacted by invasive species and then working with the partners in each country, like French Polynesia and the Cook Islands and other places like that, to then go in and actually remove those invasive species, just clear them out from the island, and then put biosecurity in place to stop them coming back again in the future. And it was just such an inspiring program to kind of just to see and sort of be part of. My role was just to write the funding proposals and to get the money in, and then Steve would then go off and deliver it, having it design the projects too. So I was sort of just the middleman, really, the cog in the wheel. But what was really nice about that was you could just see the conservation impact so clearly. I feel a lot of conservation projects are absolutely wonderful, but they're in it for the long haul. You're looking at 10, 20 or so years, before impact really comes back, protection of sites and species and whatever, very kind of gradual wins. Whereas that, it is overnight, black and white. There's a problem. The problem's now gone. We've removed the rats from the island, and we can talk about how they do that. It's quite fun. And then by this time next year, the seabirds have come back, and they really do come back quickly. The problem's resolved, and then you can move on. And it's a very sustainable solution to the problem. It's just, I found that such a nice, of all the kind of different conservation projects I've sort of seen or had a slight involvement with, that's the one that really excited me. Like, wow, the impact's there immediately, and it is a solution for the future that works. And I was super lucky. I got to go on one project where they actually did. We had like a little field trip over a weekend in Fiji, and Steve was removing, was doing a project. It was removing goats and rats from an island. Have you seen that Tom Hanks film Castaway?
Yes.
Yeah. That was the island that he was working on. Yeah. So it's called Vatuira. It's just like a little island way out on the western side of Fiji, northwest.
Wow.
And we sort of, cruised out to it over like, a day or so in a little boat, got onto the island, camped there for a weekend, just us on the Castaway, the Tom Hanks Island. And on the Saturday morning, this helicopter flew across from the mainland with a big bait bucket of rat poison, basically. And it sprays it across the island bit by bit. So the whole island has like an even density covering of rat poison, which very quickly degrades and doesn't impact any of the wildlife at all, just specific to rats. And it was so great, like watching this helicopter kind of doing its work and sort of understanding and seeing what was going on, like getting out from behind the desk and having that kind of fun experience. So then I could go back and reconnect with it back in the office. And when I was writing my grant proposals, which is really slow, hard, boring work, I felt much clearer as to what was going on. So that was a real highlight for me, kind of getting out to that.
Just to have the whole picture, just imagining you doing something fulfilling and with impact, but also you were living in Fiji, like, can you describe a bit your house or how was the landscape, or where you were living, or were you always in your shirt and flip-flops?
I wore flip-flops or bare feet for 3 years. Yeah. Wow. That's the only way to live. Yeah, it's lovely. Yeah, I lived in Suva, which is the capital city of Fiji on the main island, on Viti Levu. There's kind of 2 big islands, and Viti Levu is the main one. So yeah, it's a lot in the capital. In Big Smoke, I guess, I think it's the biggest city in the Pacific region, but it's still quite small. It's sort of 200,000 people, something like that. We sort of lived just on the outskirts. I could walk to work, which was just lovely, because I used to sit in traffic for an hour in Cambridge. And day to day, it was fairly normal. You'd walk to work, do the work in the office, walk home. We lived in a really nice house. We were very lucky. But I think the fun was the weekends. It's the weekends my wife and I could just jump in a cab or hire a car and just drive off. And then from there, jump off and get a boat out to the islands. And my wife's a marine biologist. And she was doing marine biology conservation for Wildlife Conservation Society, WCS, while we were out there. So we would get to go and have lovely weekends doing diving, like scuba diving around the sort of tiny little islands and atolls and everything else that was in the area. So yeah, it was one of those things where we just knew we were very, very lucky. And I look back at it now and I still think, oh gosh, it was such fun.
Bright side of conservation.
Yeah. And actually there is an international conservation movement. There's lots of organizations that work internationally, lots of staff that move around the globe. That have particular specialisms, and that's certainly. And I think some of the bigger skills, project program management, we've talked about this before, fundraising, that's what I was doing, communications, these are big things, policy advocacy, legal as well, economics. they want people with those sorts of skills, and you can be quite in demand, really. And the other side would be languages. I mean, Kristi, is a good example of that, being able to travel around and pick up different languages in different countries. That's definitely a career route.
That's
people
largely overselling my language skills.
You can run webinars in Spanish, you can speak Portuguese.
No digas eso, Kristi.
It's more than me. Yeah. Yeah, so there's definitely opportunities for that. Yeah. And actually just finishing, I guess, that off. So across the time while I was there, the invasive species program that Steve was running went from, I guess initially before I arrived, it was kind of a small scale program in Fiji. It then grew out to a regional scale program across these 7-8 countries that he was working on, before I got there. And then while I was there, it then grew to what was called like a global program within BirdLife. So partners across the world. Wow. Up to 120 different countries were then involved in this kind of invasive species project. Alien removal, if you like, from different places. And that was really nice to see. So I sort of understood it on the field side. I saw it face to face. I saw it at the regional level. And by the time I left, it was this kind of big global thing. It was launched at a global summit. And it was like, that was a nice moment for me to kind of to realize that other people and other organizations are going to be doing this more and more. And Steve was the guy who's going to head that up and make that happen. Yeah, that was cool.
Multiplying the impact.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah. 1 country, 8 countries, 120 countries. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's amazing, like just listening to both of you talk through, what's just a fraction of your experience, because I know there's more stories in there. And I'm sure, Nando, you have a ton more sort of adventurous stories in your career too, but aren't we fortunate?
Yeah.
I was just having a conversation with someone yesterday from a totally different sector about sort of reaching, I just asked if they were enjoying their work, and they said, oh, I've kind of just hit a plateau and, I'm not learning anything new. And I just thought, oh my gosh, it's very rare that in a conservation in our sector, you kind of hit that. And I guess sometimes we create that for ourselves. Like you're talking about the 3-year cycle, and Nando, you're talking about the game, a brilliant game analogy, but maybe we create it for ourselves also. But I think it's a little bit built into the sector too, a bit. There is a lot of next challenge and moving around, and whether that's moving, projects or countries or whatever it is. But there's
and the mission, absolutely. I had this same conversation last week, Kristi. It was the same. I was having lunch with a friend, and she was explaining to me that she kind of enjoyed the work, but not absolutely. She wouldn't go out of the meeting saying, "Oh, that was a really good meeting." Like she wasn't, and she was envying this constant mission pleasure we have. So this is a very valuable thing. For sure I earn much less than my friend. but I'm happy with the exchange.
That's true. Yeah, I think I'm it's quite somber really, but I personal belief I have is that you live once, and I want to kind of look back a little bit and feel like I made a difference. And I think a lot of people feel that too. I'm not saying I'm making much of a difference now, but I want to be able to look back and think that, there was an impact there and my career meant something. And we are enormously lucky, to be able to do what we do, to kind of follow our passion. Yeah, that's a good point.
I have a very, very early memory, like several decades ago now, of my very first, it was an internship, but it was my very first conservation job. And I remember going with a friend of mine. We have met through the job, and our job that day was to identify and catalog habitats. So we were walking there with our binoculars, writing down species and driving our 4-wheel drive. And at some point I remember this, we were walking under the sun and then the nature, and then we look at each other and we said, we are getting paid for this. And of course our work had value, and my current work, I want to think that it has value, and I try to put a lot of effort in it, but it's actually true. Like I still get many moments of, wow, I'm getting paid for this. It's fantastic. And this is This is better than any higher salary.
Yeah. There's a lot of studies that say money doesn't bring happiness. You need a certain amount to be happy, and then above that threshold, which isn't a huge amount, then it doesn't make a huge amount of difference to your day-to-day, happiness and well-being. Yeah.
That also helps that what I used to do for fun before is now what I do for a living. So I will do it anyway in my free time. So it's, that's something.
Yeah, that's nice. Well, we're sort of coming up on time. We normally sort of wrap up around now, but one thing I didn't mention that I think also is a nice thing that we do and we experience through conservation careers quite a lot is when we actually have messages from people that we've helped. And we sort of see that, quite nicely, particularly through our kind of private CC Pro platform that we're all involved with, the three of us. And, we see people turning up to events and asking questions and being part of our courses. And it just is so nice when you kind of see the hard work come to fruition and they kind of secure jobs and they get placements and they kind of progress through. Often at that point, we never hear from them again, which is fine. That we kind of help them, we've solved their problem, if you like, and they move on. And one thing we need to kind of keep doing is keeping the people who secure jobs kind of part and close to us and helping them to kind of tell their story, just as we're doing right now, tell their stories back to,
their stories, yes.
Yeah, exactly. And we hear that a little bit. I think we're more conscious of that now, but yeah. But it was, even today, there was lovely. I think we all saw a comment from Ishmael in Nairobi, Kenya, who we've been with now, I think, for sort of 6 months, or he's been with us, I guess. And he sort of turns up to live events. He's a real passionate, committed conservationist. He runs a clothes shop in Nairobi. But we've kind of helped and supported him to put in good applications, CVs, cover letters, all that sort of stuff. And he first got an internship for, I think it was the Mara Elephant Project, which he did for a couple of weeks, did really well, and they were very impressed with him. And then he was just sharing back recently, he's just secured a job in Mauritius, kind of working out there for the next 6 months, and just saying thanks to us three specifically. And it was that those sorts of moments, I think, are really nice to kind of know at every different level in different places we've helped someone, and it's nice to kind of be part of that journey and to sort of see them over the line. That's the goal, really, from where we're coming from, is get people to kind of into employment and keep them motivated, keep them on track, and give them the skills and resources they need to get those interviews and to get those jobs. Yeah, so that's a really nice thing, I think, that we do through CC. Yeah,
right. And in helping some single person in Nairobi getting this job, and then you all of a sudden are increasing the positive area that this person will be supporting conservation in that area, and that you are giving tools. Well, like the example earlier with the video games, no, it's like you help that person increase their level, that character. Now it will be fighting monsters there.
Yeah. When I name this podcast, there's going to be some video game reference in there.
Imagine Nando being Super Mario, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, you can see the impact then be multiplied, right? Yes. One single person can then go on and create that much more impact in their.
And we all together create an army of impact.
That's what we want, isn't it? We want more people out there conserving wildlife. We want them to be as good as they can be in their jobs. Yeah, that's the sort of end result. And that links quite nicely, actually, as we wrap up, to just mention, if people are listening and it's before the 8th of July, 2022, we are currently looking for people to join what we call the Conservation Careers Bootcamp. And very briefly, I'm not trying to do a big sales pitch, but in case you're listening and you're interested, the Bootcamp is like a comprehensive program. It's a 12-month program where we provide training. So you go through what we call our Kickstarter program, which is all about how you get clear about which job is right for you, how you get ready for your specific chosen job. And we talk through why that's important in the course, and also how you get hired. So like with Ishmael, how do you put in great CVs and application letters, cover letters, that sort of stuff, and deliver great interviews. It also involves our CC Pro community. Nando is the manager of our community. Kristi, you're in there too, as am I. We're in there supporting students. People are supporting each other. It's a really nice, friendly, warm place where we see what's going on. We support people through the highs and lows and get people through to employment. That's our goal. And it's about 450 people in there at the moment. So it's really nice, and it's totally international. And then you also get full access to our jobs board. So there's opportunities as well. So we don't talk about it a lot on the podcast, but we have 15,000 jobs and volunteer and internships and training courses that kind of are on the site every year. And as a bootcamper, you get access to all that, so you get the training, you get the support and the community, and you also get the jobs as well. And we're currently looking for our second cohort of 2022. It'll be our final cohort. So we're looking for 2 each year. And it closes on the 8th of July. So if you're interested, check it out. There's a 50% discount right now. And people can join for just $9.99 euros or pounds for the first deposit enrollment. So check it out. I know you'll find the link on the website, I'm sure, if you look. Right. End of sales pitch. Okay. But it's there if you're interested. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually went through, I told you, Nick, I went through the first part. So the Kickstarter course.
Yeah.
I went through the first part again for myself recently because it's super useful.
You do it once a year, right?
Starting out. Sorry?
You do it once a year.
Not always once a year. Like I've done it before and I did it again. Yeah, just recently, because it gives you what we call a career compass to kind of, reflect and help guide you when you're making different decisions. And yeah, I loved it. It's great.
Yeah, I like it too.
It's so helpful.
Yeah, it says 3 modules. The first one's all about self-reflection. Yeah, it's all about who are you, what you bring into your career, how do you like to work? Are you an outsider, an inside person? Do you work in groups on your own? Where do you want to be in your career? What are the passions that you're interested in, the things that you want to support, those causes, and so forth. And then from that, module 2, we paint the picture of, okay, what does the employment landscape look like? And how can we place you and everything that's unique about you into that, which is the right job for you to focus on, that you can become really competitive and employable and find that impact that you're looking for, in your career. And then the final module 3 is all about rubber hits the road applications. So it kind of fits together quite neatly. But like you said, Kristi, just module 1 on its own is really insightful. We're not looking to push people into conservation. We're just looking for people to find the right job for them, whichever job that might be. So module 1 on that compass might suggest actually you want to be doing something slightly outside of something elsewhere, which is a great outcome. That's great. It's just find the right job for you. And it could be in conservation. I hope it is, but it might be somewhere else. Yeah.
It saves you a lot of time.
Saves a lot of time, saves a lot of money.
Funny because we all think that we know ourselves very well, but we don't plan our lives or our professions. We put more effort into planning a weekend trip. We never sit down and plan what I want to do for the next 5 years. And this
so true.
Model 1 it makes you do exactly that. Okay, who am I? What do I really want? That's why it works so well.
Yeah,
absolutely. You're right though. Yeah, really, I love that. We put more effort into our weekend trips than our careers. Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah,
very true. Yeah, we sort of wend and wind, and we change all the time too. So yeah, I do tend to do sort of about once a year, do this kind of reflection at the end of the year. We've talked about it previously, but yeah, just checking in and seeing what changes is quite important.
Very, very important.
Yeah. Well, on that note, thank you guys. Thank you, Nando. Thank you, Kristi. Thank you everyone for listening as well at home, wherever you might be. I hope you're all safe and well. Nando, I hope you get well soon and recover fully soon. Back up to full strength, power up. Nando.
Leveling up.
Level 2. Okay, well, till next time, this is Nick, Nando, and Kristi signing out.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.